Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I'm very glad to be back here at St. Mark's and with Ajahn Nisabo. Ajahn Kovilo is teaching, I think he's teaching something about heaven right now is what Ajahn Nisabo tells me, so he's not here. I think Ajahn Nisabo said he gets hell next week, and I was like, but I think he wanted to, you ask him why he wanted to teach about hell. So I've been, I ordained at Abhayagiri Monastery back in 2008 and spent a lot of time in the pretty much 10 years at Abhayagiri, 1 year in Thailand, and I've been in England for almost 6 years now. And one thing about spending a lot of time in other cultures is that you get a perspective on your own. And I remember I was riding on a bus, the monastery bus, from traveling to another monastery's festival, and this from Chithurst, and a visiting Thai monk who's staying at Chithurst long term, Ajahn Mahaphuket, very intelligent, great, he speaks English really well, very curious. He asked me a tough question. He said, what are Americans like? Can you tell me something about? And I was like, oh my, how do you say anything? Because there's a lot of differences, but then what I said was, well, yeah, there's a lot of diversity in America, but most Americans are idealistic and individualistic. And I've been pondering my response ever since I said that. Because, I think there's a lot to that. Whichever, there's great divisions in American society right now, but whichever division you're part of, it seems, really lots of thinking about how things should be, and lots of focus on me, or the way individuals, there's not so much on community. And of course, I was speaking to a Thai monk, and his society is quite different. Thailand is not very idealistic. They don't get excited about ideas, and it's much more communal culture. I'm a whole lot less important in Thailand. It's like, and especially in the Thai monasteries, it's very much more, So for him, and we talked about it. I think it was an enlightening answer for both of us. And I think both, as a society and personally, I think we can learn a lot by finding strategies to approach those, because they aren't wrong. Idealism and individualism is not a sort of problem, but if you don't balance it with something else, it can get unbalanced and oppressive. And so one of the ways to, one of the most common responses to, you hear something like that and you think, well, yeah, okay, I should be less idealistic. How do I get myself less idealistic? And you think about, Right. Well, that's approaching that's approaching it from idealism and individualism. And you generally cannot solve a problem with the same, or you cannot address something by staying within the paradigm that it's in. Not a good idea. And so one of the things that I find very helpful for working with idealism is to shift attention away from out of the mind and into the body. That's where you can get a handle on it. Because first off, our bodies are not ideal. How many people have the body they want? Nope, doesn't do it. And I think most people in the room are wise enough to realize that. So we say, yeah, well, I have the body that I have, and I can't really do much about that. But then we think, well, but my mind, I should be able to make my mind the way I want it to. I should be more loving, more kind, and many of us have our list about, when I meditate, it should stop, and all this stuff. And so coming out of that, being with, the physical body and that quality of energy I was talking about, it's not ideal. You'll see your stuff there. But it's also a space where you can hold it. That's a space that can hold something that is less than perfect. And at least when I'm there, I recognize, I can really hold the things I think should be different about myself and about other people. They're there, but there's space. And in that space, there can sometimes be the possibility of transformation. But it's not coming, and it doesn't come out of a sense of it should be different, but rather, wow, this anger is painful in here. Is there a way I can release that? So it's coming. The Buddha phrased his, I teach suffering, dukkha, and the cessation of dukkha. He didn't say, I'm going to teach you so you become what you should be. It's not be all you can be. It's where is a place of non-suffering? And this non-suffering is, the Buddha was very clear that this non-suffering is it's for me and for others. If I'm happy in a way that causes other people to suffer, they're going to get upset and try to stop, and try to block that. And I'll feel it too. That's, I think, sensitive people do not like causing harm to others. And it's very much, to others as to myself. This quality of non-harming. And there we're beginning to move away from that individualism as well. The idea that, that I'll be happy if I get what I want. We question that. And again, for most people here, we probably can see through the blatant manifestation of that, but more subtle manifestations may still catch us. The focus on getting what I want and paying a lot of attention to that. Whereas, say, in a monastic community, I learn more sort of, what harmonizes with the group. It's one simple way to do this is in conversation. I can certainly feel what it's like when I feel I need to say something. And I can tell the difference between when that's coming from a place of, I need to express myself. That feels one way. Or, this would really contribute. that feels a different way. Can you feel that? And again, I look in the body. Can you feel the difference between those energies? And choose not to speak when it's about saying who I am, but speak with courage when it's about, this would be of real benefit here. This would really help us. So, and these are what? These are not easy times. And I mean, what? I remember I've been listening to Ajahn Kaccana's question and answer sessions from the many retreats he gives, and he gave a Dhamma talk and question and answer session to in 2004 to a group of people, meditation group in Israel. And in the question and answer session, someone asked, how in the world do we cope with this? This is an ongoing crisis situation. She said, it feels like being on top of an active volcano. Now, this is stronger than what we're dealing with in the United States right now. And I must say, Lumpur Pasano had no easy solutions because there aren't. But what he did emphasize was, he emphasized community. That support, really reaching out to good friends and supporting each other. And I mean, I think that's one of the things that, it's pretty amazing that everybody comes here. And I think you're already doing quite a bit of that. And so really, really emphasizing your connections with each other. That's helpful. Let's see. And then, but then also finding a refuge within oneself. Really committing to taking the steps that form a refuge. That was actually the Buddha's instructions on his as he was dying was be a refuge unto yourself. Again, and it might not just be the individual self, but also, he was talking to a group, be a refuge for each other as well. But taking the time to really pay attention to what is of benefit internally, what really nourishes us for the long term. And and again, this is nothing new, nothing different than practicing the teachings, but noticing, if we feel we may need more inner strength, how can we shift our attention and priorities towards the things that we find cultivate that inner strength, and certainly spending time with good friends is one of them. And the Buddha's teaching is holistic. You can pick it up anywhere, and you pick sort of it all up with it. But the simplest one of the simplest summaries is that of Sila, virtue, moral conduct, integrity. Those are its clusters. And then samadhi, which is firm establishment of the mind, the ability to keep the mind stable. And panya, discernment, being able to make good choices and to recognize to see through the illusions of the world, recognize the way things truly are. And so, so starting with Sila, that's a very important base. Morality, if we choose to keep our behavior within limits, skillfully chosen limits, then the result of that is, if we reflect on it skillfully, is self-respect. We recognize that, we have ethical principles. We're not hurting people. And boy, you can certainly see the counterexamples in modern society. And rather than dwelling too much on, if you noticing the problems that those cause can be an impetus to further committing oneself to the principles that do not have those harmful consequences. So, just committing to tell the truth, which is, anyway, that seemed stronger in our society when I was young than it does now. But it can still be strong in us. And we can recognize the power of it, because if you lie to others, you'll end up lying to yourself. And if you lie to yourself, awakening is impossible. You cannot do it. There's no way you will be able to overcome your internal hindrances if you cannot be honest with yourself about them. And there's no way you'll be able to stay with the kind of friends that you need to support you in that journey unless you're honest with them. So, that's a big deal. And then, non-harming, non-exploitation, just recognizing that, ultimately, we can't gain at others' expense. And one of the teachings, it was originally for monastics, but P.A. Payutto extends it to the lay people as well, is that of the four requisites. The human beings, we don't live on air. It's the Buddha was not idealistic, saying, human beings don't need anything. We do. And what we need are, the Buddha listed as clothing, food, shelter, and medicine. And so, we can, and so those are human needs. And it's good to recognize that. And it's good to recognize that, lots of people are going overboard on this. They and sometimes we have the four requisites, enough. But we feel dissatisfied within. And so we try to, what should we say? And the external world says very clearly, if you buy this thing, you'll feel satisfied within. So we try it. And maybe it's satisfying for a little while, but then it doesn't work, and so but the advertising says buy something else. And so we keep buying, and we keep staying dissatisfied. The Buddha, Mara once tempted the Buddha to go to assume a political role. And the Buddha told Mara, look, Mara, not even 2 mountains of gold would be enough for one person's greed. And I think we could, I don't know, it seems to be more evident today than at the Buddha's time. But it's, if you're looking for satisfaction by getting more material stuff, you're looking in the wrong place. Unless, if you're poor and lacking in these requisites, acquiring these requisites will help your well-being. But if you already have these and you're feeling dissatisfied, look to cultivate your relationships with other people, and cultivate a skillful relationship with yourself, and that's where you'll find satisfaction. And if you have extra material stuff, try giving it away and really delighting in that. Generosity, and we forget how to recognize our own goodness in this culture. And some people, I was talking with someone yesterday, member of my family, and she was saying how difficult it is to recognize the contributions that she makes to our family, which are massive. But somehow her mind says, I shouldn't acknowledge that. I need to do something more. There's something not here, but I can't. It's like, you're doing amazing things. Where is that coming from? Where's that? And, so where is that? How can we learn to give and really enjoy it? I mean, I discovered that as a layperson, that, I could, in terms of well-being, the best thing I could do with my my sort of extra financial resources was to give them to people and causes that I really thought would do some good in the world. And I would open I had my Quicken financial software, and it's very interesting. I would open that up, and I would look at I would look at the pie chart of how I was spending my money, and my heart would glow. I would think, the way I am spending my money is in tune with my priorities. That makes me happy. Yeah. So, that was, and so so Sila and generosity. And then working with, I'll skip to a discernment next. Recognize, and I've already talked about some of it, just, recognizing that, in a way, talking about the four requisites, that's discernment. Recognizing what truly is and is not the cause of a lasting well-being. What truly is and is not the cause of social cohesion and harmony. What are the causes for what are the causes for the arising of skillful states in the mind? What are the causes for the arising of unskillful states in the mind? And the discernment also contains it also is the ability to follow through with these. You can learn, I learned how to make skillful resolutions for myself. One of the things that I've learned is that we do have a tradition in this culture of making New Year's resolutions, and I think that's wise. I mean, there's wisdom in recommitting oneself to one's principles every year. But what I found for myself was that I'd sometimes approach this by thinking of an ideal self. How would I like myself to be? And I'll resolve to be that way. And I discovered that is not such a good approach to resolutions. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't make resolutions and aspirations. What I learned to ask myself, for instance, look at, where in your, say you want to abandon some unskillful behavior in your life. Great. Look at the causes. Where is it that you commit? Where is it that that unskillful behavior occurs? So if you want to stop drinking, for example, make a resolution not to go in bars. That was not my problem at all, but it's a simple illustration. Or if you notice, if you notice that you're completely drained of energy and likely to do unskillful things in the evening, but not any other time of the day, come up with something you can do in the evening. Like, for instance, recollect, who is it that you're grateful for that day? Give yourself some really good homework, simple, to do in the evening. And so replace the unskillful activities with that. And so this is what I found more effective than approaching resolutions with idealism. And then if you've chosen skillfully, results naturally follow. Those times will be less problematic for you. And similarly, so that's good. And then for samadhi, this is my teacher, Ajahn Kaccana, translates this as the firm establishment of the mind. I find it helpful. Yeah, concentration, sometimes, you think, Rodin's the thinker, like this, scrunched up. Really, it is concentrated, but it's not samadhi, at least not as I understand it. And so with samadhi, you're looking for what we were talking about in that meditation, a really relaxed quality of body and mind. Relaxed, precise attention is some words that I find helpful there. Because oftentimes when we think of it, if we think of relaxing, we think of spacing out and not paying attention. When we think of precision, we think of tensing up. And so learning how to cultivate that through meditation. And in some ways, that's the one that takes the most work, because I don't know any substitute for practice on that one. So, I could talk longer, but I find that question and answer periods are some of the most productive times for these groups. So I think I will end my Dhamma talk here and open up for questions.
Handamayam Dhamma Kataya Sadhu Karam Dadamase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
So if people want to raise their hand, we'll have a mic runner. Miles, get some more exercise and run it over to you. And if you're on Zoom, raise your cartoon hand and we'll be able to call on you that way.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I was just thinking about this a lot, the selfless and selfish actions, and sometimes I see in myself desire to do something selfless, and it feels a little selfish when I get the recognition back, and I was just curious what your thoughts might be on how to continue to do selfless acts without getting too in your head about the recognition that you get and the satisfaction you can get from doing easy things that gain a lot of recognition versus the hard things, which may get a little less recognition. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Same family member was talking about how difficult it was to receive praise. And one of the most helpful things that I find is that, I too find it difficult to be praised. So it's, so if someone says, I really liked your Dhamma talk, I'll often feel a bit uncomfortable. But I've learned, I will, if there's any time available, I will follow that up with what is it that you appreciated, what touched you in that Dhamma talk. So now, and they tell me, and that's very helpful feedback for me. And it's both feedback that I can use to shape how and why I say things in the future, and it's also connecting, because they will tell me often what specific benefit they received from that. I think I might have a way forward with this relationship I've been struggling with, or or I feel like I'm more able to love myself now. And when someone tells you something like that, I feel connected to them. It's not about what I did, it's about my connection with them. And I mean, it feels great, but it's also really wholesome. It's not bolstering my ego. I'm just, in a way, I also recognize that what they're doing actually you are doing most of the work, and listen, I just say something, and it's up to you all to take this in and really benefit from it. Okay?
Can I add one thing, Ajahn?
Yes.
There's a sutta where the Buddha says, a true person, when speaking about his own or their own good qualities, speaks little holding back. Or, when pressed with questions, does not speak about their own good qualities, but when pressed with questions, they speak little holding back. A true person, when speaking about another's good qualities, speaks in full, in detail. A true person, when speaking of their own or another's bad qualities, speaks little and holds back. And just this dynamic of the 8 worldly winds: pleasure, pain, gain, loss, fame, disrepute, praise, blame, censure, disrepute. 4 of the 8 are to do with the comparing mind and social, being, hit by the social winds. And it's just such a powerful force. And I think there's just acknowledging how strong of a driver that is for many of us, and just trusting that if you do good, like, sometimes the praise will come back. And then the Buddha really recommended steering the praise, like acknowledging it and working with it skillfully, like Ajahn Kaccana does, but also if you can kind of steer the praise over your shoulder a little. Like, there's a great sutta where a bhikkhu is saying how he would approach a conflict among the Sangha, and he says, instead of saying, I went to those monks and I fixed it, he says, I went to the Blessed One and I heard the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, I went to those monks and I talked to them about the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, they then came in line with the Dhamma. And if you can always, say, well, I had this great example when I was a kid, or it was just such a beautiful act that they did, I felt inspired. Like, there's a beautiful little Aikido you can do there. And then, those times when I think there's plenty to work with, just in the space of those times where you see yourself hinting at what you did, and just, hoping you get acknowledgement. Like, just work with that moment. And if you just hold back in those moments, there's a real majesty of spirit that's available there. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you for your talk. The question is sort of about imagination versus reality, and the imagination of thinking versus the sort of reality of the body. And today you described really beautifully how that sort of refuge of the body could enable you to see more clearly and more skillfully around kind of almost like worldly issues, relationships, and pain and anger. I'm wondering, some Dhamma seems to point out, if you have this connection with reality or the body and the mindfulness steps, that there's something else there that leads somewhere else other than kind of cleaning up your life. That liberation is sort of beyond that, and I'm just curious if that's how to put this Dharma talk in context of that. Like, I really love the idea that I could be, more joyous and wholesome and engaged. But I also am curious about the other portion of that.
Yeah, the other portion is very there. I mean, I didn't mention it so much this time because last time, a couple of weeks ago, I talked more about that. But yeah, it's I don't know how many people have a chance to come on Thursday for Lumpur Liam, but if you look at Lumpur Liam, I've spent enough time and Ajahn Nisaba, I think, has spent more. He's someone who both, I would say, transcends the world and works astonishingly skillfully within the world at the very same time. It can be done. But again, there's people who are much, who are, a lot more skillful at it than I am. Again, I said some things 2 weeks ago about the quality of knowing and how that can go beyond the quality of knowing is at least my understanding, my sort of direction towards the transcendent. But so I might refer you to, if you're interested, I might refer you to my presentation 2 weeks ago here.
So first of all, I want to ask, do you feel that our culture is very focused on the negative aspects, or pointing out the negative aspects of other people? And if you do, how do you think that as a culture we can sort of move past that?
Yeah, I mean, as a monk, I'm somewhat divorced from the popular culture, but yeah, from my understanding is that there is a great deal of criticism out there, and it is, sometimes, my understanding is sometimes elections are much more about how much mud you can sling at your opponent than what you have to contribute yourself. So on my limited experience, yes, I would say that it does seem that there is a lot of criticism out there. And as to where to go with ourselves and how to work with that, let's see. Yeah, I mean, being able to empathize and understand people you disagree with can really help. It's not such an easy skill, but I mean, from their point of view, they seem to be right.
Can I add one thing, Ajahn? So many of you know the precept against lying, but one of the 4 qualities of unwholesome speech is also Pisa Vacha, which is divisive speech. And it's not slander because it's honest things you're saying about another person, but it's with the intent to divide. And the Buddha doesn't just encourage us to avoid that, but also says, one, he kind of adds the positive counterparts. One rejoices in harmony, speaks words conducive of harmony, rejoices in seeing those who are split apart brought together. And I think the beginning point of letting go of this critical mind is letting go of it over time towards ourselves. Our inheritance in this culture is a brutal edge of self-criticism. And that's just something that has to be confronted in practice one way or the other early on. And it's a storm for people to confront that. But it does, you do see the unskillfulness and untruthfulness of those internal speech patterns and self-criticism, and it does wind down and fade. And meanwhile, you're cultivating these positive qualities like, Sila, virtue, how you're using your life and your wealth and your this time you have, and that has a real healing quality in the heart. When people start encountering deep samadhi, often they'll go through a long period of kind of grieving for past actions as kind of the wounds heal. But the point is you come away with a chitta much brighter, and it happens almost imperceptibly, but it's very powerful. And when you stop being so self-critical with yourself, it just makes it a lot easier to be less critical with others. And like the bruise still hits of disappointment or embarrassment, but you'll find it just passes more quickly and you kind of bounce back. It slides off you. And to really pay attention to that, because that will affect how you treat others. And then just to take very seriously the Buddha's admonition against gossip, like cut it off. If you need to say something about another person in a certain context, like really frame that conversation. Say, I usually don't talk about others, but I actually think I need to speak about this one issue in this context. But really, like, that is a foundation for a community like this. And I think it's the real Achilles heel of most Buddhist practitioners and monastics too. You know, we're all in this boat a little bit. Not most monastics, but I know it's something I've worked with in the past. And the final thing is, sometimes there's a bit of a get out of jail free card us practitioners can use, where you have a friend who gossips a lot and you don't say anything, but you kind of let them go, and you get all the juicy bits, but without getting your hands dirty. And I think we all know this kind of sleight of hand. And when the Buddha says speaking words conducive of harmony, I think this is him encouraging you, like, actually, there's a place in those situations. It takes a little more bravery, and you have to choose the right moment, but just saying, like, actually, this person has a lot of really beautiful qualities. Or if it's the same old conversation about a political party you've heard 100 times over dinner before, just say, like, you know, I think these communities are really suffering for these reasons, and if we grew up in that informational ecosphere, we might have the same view. But yeah, just taking seriously those interpersonal dynamics, and that will affect how you think about others too. So rejoicing in harmony. That's one of the key metrics for Ajahn Kovilo and myself of who we draw close to. So. Zoom question from Nicole. I think you're still muted, Nicole.
Yeah,
Oh, we can hear you.
okay.
Go for it.
Thank you, Bhante. I have a follow-up question on recognition, but specifically wondering if you have any words about recognition from teachers. Because I know for me, and I'm sure this goes back to like childhood experiences, but like, oh, the teacher said my name. Oh, they recognized I was here. This kind of like wanting that kind of specific recognition. Oh, they read my question. You know, I'm sure you encounter this a lot in community, and I feel it a lot in different communities. So thank you.
Let's see. Yeah, specifically seeking recognition from teachers. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, yeah, because I felt that a lot in one spiritual community I was in, and then when I moved to this one, it just felt different. It was, maybe Ajahn Nisabo can say something about it, but it was interesting. I just didn't feel like Ajahn Pasano and Ajahn Amaro just didn't seem to encourage that all that much. So that seeking and how to, I mean, certainly recognizing it within yourself, and again, you know, just being perhaps willing to hold back, recognizing that you know, if there's something good, you can recognize it in yourself, and if your teacher is skillful, they will probably eventually they'll notice it too, but they may or may not point it out, and that's fine. The sort of the motivation for skillfulness is not someone else's praise, but the intrinsic results of being skillful are happiness. And maybe Ajahn Nisabo has something to say.
No, that was great, and I think what Ajahn Kaccana is pointing out with like long prapassana spaciousness, like, it's a real, like, when you step into a community that's spiritual, I think we have this conceit, like, everything's going to be bad, and then we find our same old patterns right there waiting for us. And it's a blessing because these communities are such safe places to work with that if you do it skillfully. And the same with a good teacher, like, you can watch the projection come up, but a good community will be like a very clear mirror where every worldly impulse you kind of jump into, like the FOMO or the urge to be heard or seen, you just feel immediately like, oh, that was a stain, that kind of tastes a little bit strange. And just to like watch that process and trust that to refine, and it's just part of it. Like, I do this with my teachers as well. Like, these projections are powerful, and often what I'll do is I'll acknowledge I'm a caricature of myself in certain situations, and that kind of helps. Just say, I really, you know, like, I know I'm acting in a bit of a, not a caricature, but yeah, I'm kind of in a mode where I really want to be liked right now, and just acknowledging I have that energy. And that sometimes helps settle it a bit, but just trusting wisdom to kind of refine those impulses little by little.
I just wanted to quickly say, just appreciate what you said about truthfulness. And sometimes truthfulness is really difficult because sometimes the truth isn't so skillful. Or maybe sometimes the truth is anger. Sometimes the truth is, and I have found that maybe sometimes it's a better idea just to remove oneself from the situation.
Yes, that is. I didn't mention it, but the Buddha has criteria for speech, and that speech can either be true or false, beneficial or unbeneficial, timely or untimely, and timely and untimely, and beneficial. Yeah, connect. Okay, yeah, and then it might be something. There's 8, but anyway, true or untrue, beneficial, pleasant or unpleasant to receive. And so the Buddha said that he dismissed anything that was false and beneficial as non-existent. So he only dealt with 6 cases. That's the first thing. But for what is true but unbeneficial, you don't say it. If it is true, beneficial, and pleasant, you say it at the right time. If it is true, beneficial, and unpleasant here, you also say it at the right time. Although you again, I must say, I'm more I get more worried about those true, beneficial, and unpleasant things. It takes you really pay attention to time and place for those. You're welcome.
Ajahn, thank you for the talk and thanks for accepting my question. I was curious how the Buddha did his duty as a son. It's the context of Mother's Day. Yeah. How was his relationship with his mom? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. How is the Buddha's relationship with his? So the Buddha's birth mother died 7 days after he was born. He was brought up by a Mahagotama Prajapati, and yeah, he ended up ordaining her, and he ended up ordaining her as a nun, and she attained arhatship. So that was how he repaid the debt of kindness he owed his mother, which is about as good as you can do. And then with his son, similarly, his son was the first Buddhist novice, and there are 3 teachings. The Buddha gave 3 great teachings that are come down in the discourses to his son, all very worth reading. And eventually, Rahula too became an arahant. It was his dad who was a little bit put out by it all. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Yes, he made the Sangha made several visits to Kapilavatthu, the capital where he had grown up before the nuns' community is founded. The exact chronology is not recorded, so we can only guess as to exactly how it happened. Yeah.
We might have time for one more.
Thank you, Ajahn. I know you spoke to the importance of community, and I definitely feel that. And but I notice when I'm in community and talking a lot, even if it's about wholesome things, my mind gets more jumbled. You know, there's something to be said about a silent retreat and not talking. So I wonder if you have any words of wisdom for that.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a very good observation. I was at a gathering of elder monks at Abhayagiri, and some of them were saying, I think we talk too much here. And I could agree with them. And we looked at what the Buddha, we looked at the Buddha's teachings on communal harmony for monastics. And, there's great stuff there, but they would often, one of the nicest descriptions is this group of 3 monks who live together, and they fulfill all their daily duties without speaking, but they're very much communicating and paying attention to each other. So yes, there is a place for speech, but there's also a place for being together in silence, and particularly if that's not a dead silence, but an attentive silence, where you're, despite not speaking, you're paying attention to the needs of others. That can feel really nourishing for the heart.
Okay. So if we can just get 3 warm sadhus for Ajahn Kaccana and visiting and the wonderful talk. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.